Hey there. So, as I'm driving in my car and I'm reflecting and listening to Pam Gregory talking about the reality of the world as we know it right now, and I'm going to start doing something. This is going to take a lot of courage, vulnerability, but it's viral. It's something I know in my heart and soul could become a movement. The kind of movement that reminds people about being human. Just stopping an average person that I don't know and asking them, if something were to happen in the world today, would you trust me? Would you side with me? Would you work side by side with me? In reality, something could happen at any moment. And I don't think people are realizing how precious this life is and the potential that we could totally destroy it if we don't get our shit together. Humans in unity. So this idea I have, so I'm a little bit getting a full-on download, but this is a movement I want to do to see. Doesn't matter what's going on in the world, what's going on in your local environment, the people you don't know, the people you see but you know you don't make eye contact or you don't get to know because you're just living your own life in your own little bubble of I don't communicate with others because you've self-isolated. Because we need to start talking to one another more. Randomly, like I'm that person anyway that would talk to anybody, but not everybody's like that. So let's say I'm driving in my car and I'm stopped at a light and I see a window down and I can ask the person a question. Put it on film and say, if something big were to happen today and you were faced with how would you get by or having to unite with one another, would you collaborate with me? Would you be with me? I've got to verbalize this a little differently, but the way that I was thinking about it is like, we need to be able to bring back that humanity to one another. The idea that we've gotten so divided with all these different labels and agendas to the point where people don't know if they have anything in common with one another. They don't even realize they've been played into this pool of pick your labels and then put yourself in these boxes. The biggest enslavement, the word spell, the black magic, the spell cast. That when it really boils down to it, the people in your most, your closest circle, the people that are nearby, like if you live in the country, do people know their neighbors? Could they trust each other? I mean, because not everybody does. And I think more people need to think about that. Just a little video of just stopping with local people, which they do videos like that all the time, right? Some of these channels, they make these channels just to, make a series of like, I stopped this person and this was their answer, and then it's the same question, but putting into perspective those questions and how people respond and whether or not they really would show their true colors. Because energy always speaks. And even if a person is put on the spot and maybe puts on, well, yeah, of course I would be with you. But if you can get an honest person, you'll get an honest answer that would blow minds, right? Like how much fear that people have in themselves and in this world to where they would actually not know who to trust around them. Because I'm not talking about, get together with my buddies. It's more like we need more than just our small circle. Sometimes you have to grow that web, the comb, the honeycomb, right? I was thinking and reflecting, and part of the downloads that I've been feeling is around this we all came from different tribes, and God Source decided you would all have these different distinct characteristics about your groups, about your tribes. And the tribes are meant to venture out and also become part of the other tribes. And there was supposed to be this interweaving and this beautiful tapestry of all these different, and this is part of the life of the game of life in this particular scenario, let's say, how so many tribes existed, and it was to see how many, what do they call that? How many varieties, how many groups and mixes and matches, you know, when you put things into a perspective of like, well, here's a black man and a black woman, and then here's a white person and a white person, but then they have the white and the black, and like then the Hispanic comes along. It's like how many mixes, and like we are the art and the tapestry of life is actually creating this beautiful piece of, you know, this idea that for so long the tribes stayed amongst their own people. But the nature of tribe is to seek more tribe. Isn't that the paradox, the irony of life? You're looking for your soul group or your calling, but interestingly, you already on the soul level are all of it. So it's just like this, I don't know, it's like this flicker out of the cards, and to see, you know, the way they fall and the way that it's so, there's so many parables and analogies and storylines that actually interweave over each other, you know, like I'm just thinking from the terms of we could use just colors and groups of these different tribes that we all have subscribed to, you know, whether you say you're French or you're Scottish or you're German or you're this, that, or whatever. There was a tribe before there was a country, and that's something that the woman that is you know, that I've been following and learning a lot from with the banking stuff and all, that's one of the things she mentions is how they've got everybody so convinced that, you know, oh, you're Italian or you're French or whatever, and that really we all came from tribes, and they know which ones we came from. We don't know because that's been withheld, and again resets. We don't know because again they've changed history, other than what we've been taught to select. Just like whenever we check off the boxes in you know, oh, are you male, you're female, all this stuff, they convinced us we had to choose a box. They chose for us through proxy. We thought we had to choose. We didn't have to choose. We didn't have to play the paper game. There you go, right there. Again, the casting of the spell is the words on the paper. They cut down the tree of life to cast a spell on humanity. I think we've talked about this many a time ago, in many of our interactions here, but it really truly is that the book was the first, you know, technology to get us disconnected from the tree of life. Literally. Like, and even metaphorically. It's just fascinating that you could intertwine all of the nature and the nurture and the human and the, you know, even the artificial, because of course it's all part of itself. So much unpacking with that, and it's really a very interesting concept. It was just a thought that came in when, like, wow, you know, we've got all these different flavors of humans, and everybody subscribed to their little group because they were just like one another, and then they decided to get out and see other places, and then they were curious by the others, and the others were curious about them, and then so came the like planting of the seeds, the mixing of the races. You know, you had an artist has to use the palette however they can, right? People just assume the medium, but they don't realize they are the medium, that they are the art in motion that God put forth, in regards especially to how humans are an expression of those mediums. And so this is the tapestry and the game, the beauty of the spiritual game, like the spiritual beauty of a game, in such a way that you don't even realize they've got us so Jedi mind tricked with this idea that we're racist, or you have to be, you're a bad person because you don't like someone, and then it has to come down to all these labels as to why you didn't like the person. But really, that has nothing to do with anything. But that's just a whole psychological operation in itself, right? Make you think you're crazy and convince you that your fellow human, just because of their color, they don't like your color, or whatever bullshit. They make up the stories. It's not to say it doesn't exist, but it's not for the general populace. It's the talking about the story that reinforces the belief system. Repetition is the key to mastery, and that's how they're psychologically programming people, even though they can't see that or hear it. But repetition is the key to mastery, so they hear it on repeat over and over again about how this is happening. What happens when you tell somebody about, white cars, or no, let's say purple cars, purple or yellow cars. Somebody says, I saw a purple car today, and maybe they describe the actual make or model, and it might influence whether or not that person continues to see the same thing that they were talking about by the power of suggestion, right? So repetition is the key to mastery, and then you've got the fact that it's scattered throughout your day and you're hearing it constantly. Then you're manifesting in your life just like they told you somebody else had done it. That's the virus. That's the real virus, is the media. And yes, this is the contrast, duality, polarity here that I'm talking about, the yin and the yang, where we are the creation of God as artistically scattered in this medium of different, biological composition, DNA, whatever you want to call the things that make us look and sound differently. That, how beautiful is that we are the medium in that sense. We are the artist piece and creation through the mixing of one another, mixing of nations. And through the mixing of nations, the irony is, again, we go back to, we want the diversity, because that is the creativity of this existence, the life that we're living. We didn't come here to be against each other because of those same beauties. But that's how they flip the switch, another one of the spellcasting black magic tricks of getting you to think against somebody that you naturally, in your heart and soul, God level. God, again, used as the different palettes on the artist palette, right? So the different colors on the palette allowed this melange of light beings, right? Human means light being. It's like the beauty of God in each one of us would want us to interact and love on one another. I'm not talking like hedonistic. I'm talking about like truly that admiration rather than that confrontation, that collaboration, that, I'm curious about you, you're curious about me, that childlike innocence that's not preyed upon, but encouraged and nourished. God wanted to see us loving each other to the point where there was never a question of how we mixed and we mingled. Because the mixing and the mingling is the creative expression of those palettes that were meant to, what's the word, give the five senses all the beauties. Because it's the seeing, this is a beautiful gift of the five senses. To see one another, to taste one another, to touch one another, to smell one another, to literally feel one another. In such a way, an intimate way, that we're not talking sexual, we're talking on that genuine human nature, not the predatorial nature, but just like we were when we were children. Children were not born racist. They were taught all of these labels. Here, pick some labels. We're only giving choices. If we give you choices, then you'll never know. By the power of suggestion, we made you think you chose it. But we are the ones who influenced what choices you had to begin with. So therefore, by proxy, they have told us, we teach you to select what we want you to based on the fact that we limit your choices, and you don't even recognize the fact that your choices were limited based on us offering them. There you go. There's that. Those are the black magic sorcerers. They came back for more, especially when they got into the govern over the mind, rule over the mind government. It's so crazy that people even defend that terminology, because it's like they can't see the spellcast. Government means to rule over your mind. So you think that government should exist? Well, yeah, we need some law, we need some control, we need some rules, some agreed upon. You realize that government means to rule over your mind, so they've convinced you, once again, to think you need them. That's a mind control right there. But you didn't even catch it. This is the sleight of hand. So clever. The highest form of the ego that worships itself. The true phallus. Sticking it in whenever they can, trying to get one over on you, not even realizing it was in you before you even saw them, you know? Literally. Wanting to worship themselves. So, the more clever we get with the psychology, the more you realize, wow, that's some fucked up shit. Even me saying it, I'm like, geez, you know, this is a part of playing the game. How clever can you be? Because you had to have been it before at one point. See, this is part of the what appears to be the recycling into this realm, is that really, because you've been it all, you've done it all. Woo! Because you've done it all, you're trying to remember that you did it to begin with. So as they bleed over the different existences, the different versions of us that have existed, it's like, how much did I retain from the previous? Because again, they basically have gotten us from birth, some in utero, got us cut off from source at a certain point, like slowly but surely trying to perfect that dose so they know exactly how to keep us from remembering, from that golden thread to source, to God, that is your soul, the soul connection. Their object is to steal that essence and just feed off of our humanness, which is actually a lower vibration. Because the higher vibration is when you're in your wholeness, connected to your soulness. You are God, but just not in this moment, but every moment, paradoxically. The irony. You're constantly remembering, yet forgetting. What is that? Something is something amnesia, like an amnesia, but it's a different type of amnesia. It's the amnesia that you do know, but you don't know. The paradox of remembering and forgetting at the same time. The witnessing of your own mind and the games that it plays, and the tricks. Trying to see if you're aware, how clever you are to figure things out, how quickly. Because you're always getting clues, like a video game, right? Artificial intelligence has been running the show a long time. This is a game. And you left breadcrumbs along the way for your own self. Because you created your script. You're just remembering in the moments when it happens, but you're forgetting that you set it all in motion to begin with. best gift. That's the exciting part about this life, is how fucking phenomenal it is that we created all of this for ourselves. We did this for us, for our highest divine God self. And then we forget every moment we remember. Because when we get so caught up in the humanness, it's a little bit less than the soulness, but it's all of one of each other. It's just which one's more empowered. That when you are remembering, those are the beautiful little parts of, like you get like those little nuggets, those little, when you're in a video game, you get, let's say, little stars, or you collect points. Well, maybe they are taking points, we don't know. But you set this all in motion. You have various ways it can end up happening. It's like a pick your adventure. And you're excited to see what you're going to do. Even though you don't know. You may know. You may think you know. But do you really know? Because ultimately, if you created it with multi-choices, right? You don't even know how many choices. There might be infinite choices. And you do remember, but you don't. So there's infinite choices that you get to choose in your pick a direction storybook life. How exciting is it to watch yourself go through it? And at periods, if you were so lucky to be in awareness of it, you go, whoa, I'm witnessing myself. I knew I had this option. And this actually played out even better than I thought it could if I went in that direction too. Because in this moment that I chose it, now I've forgotten what the other choices were. I can't go back because I set this in motion. And there's no loops. There are always going to be new stories. And I'm creating it as I go along as well. I'm creating it ahead of myself with anticipation of already having several options at each juncture. Oh boy, does that play with my IT mind. Like, the computer brain in me is like, oh, this is very cool. Wow. I just really hope that everyone out there really sits with the beauty that really just exists here. Like, really sit with what really truly exists here. Outside of all the mind chatter, all of the mind controls, the psychological operations to get you to basically stay within the confines of their game. That you do have more power than you realize. That in recognizing the gaslighting, the manipulation of, like I said, choice by proxy. It's if you only give me 4 choices, you didn't give me choices. You told me what to pick. Because they've already figured out the probability of people picking those 4 choices. And so therefore, now we're going to set a precedence. We've convinced you have to choose information on an application. Are you a male or are you a female? What's your age, date of birth, those things. What's your occupation? Well, most of us are still like, what do I put down? Unless you have a distinguished or particular job title that you were given. It's like, there you go again. Did you really have a choice to put down a title? Or are you just trying to, there's all these little boxes that we cross and check off, and it's just like, whoa. And then we get so caught up in all that little craziness, and then we forget about the beauty in having that. Because we get so caught up, but don't realize how caught up, and it's a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They're stressing you out because you have to decide on something that seems like it should be easy, but yet it really isn't, because it doesn't align with you. You know why it doesn't align? Because as a soul, as a beautiful soul, light being that you are so much more than the choices they try to confine you to. And so therefore, your body fights against that. Your mind fights against that. Why? Because your nature is to just be you, with all of these labels and all of these things. You know, even the fact that we call things by color. We started losing the essence. I mean, a lot of stuff is lost in voice and talking anyway. Because the beauty of an experience of a moment can never fully be expressed as it's felt, especially through words. But because a sensation of feeling, a knowing. The moment you start putting words on it, you start bringing in the creepies of the stressor outers, conscious or unconscious. Stress means you have to put and exhaust mental effort upon it. And so if something is just a beautiful experience, anytime we are explaining it or expressing about it is losing the moment. It's actually a beautiful paradox. It's a beautiful, what's that word? It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's all beautiful. Not trying to be all silly, airy-fairy, but I genuinely mean everything is truly beautiful until we lose the beauty through the expression of the words and explaining it and labeling it and telling a story about it, because again, everything is a story. But through all of this having to tell a story, we lose so much, but yet we gain so much too. You know, does that sound funny or what? But that's the beauty of it. When you're excited, you want to share something with somebody. When you're upset, you want to share something with somebody. Do you reinforce or do you just empower? Like, think about that, because the more we tell the story, that's the life we're living, that's what we're creating. Because repetition is the key to mastery. So if you're telling the story, your cells in your body and your being is just basically digging in deep into those grooves. And once you've got a groove, sometimes it's not so easy to move, which is ironic about the word groove, because if you get groovy, baby, you can groove, you can move. And sometimes people are in a groove and they can't move. Boy, how blessed are we? Yes, beautiful words, all of them. Beautiful experiences. And we are here to help each other remember, to come back to humans in unity, recognizing that if something big were to happen, could you just stop a person on the street and feel trustworthy and then be able to trust, not knowing the person? Like, this is how much divide they've created, this chasm between humans. You've got beautiful, really, really great. I pick up on a lot of the deliberate gaslighting and intended setups in a lot of these, like TikToks or Instagrams and sometimes Twitter too. It's like you look at how certain questions are postulated for people to ask, and they look like they're a reputable person because they're asking a question. So therefore, it looks like, well, you're an interviewer, so you're appropriate. Not necessarily. Like, just because they're asking you a question doesn't, you should really question their intention behind it. Always. This is a huge part about maturity. And emotional maturity especially. Because right now, like for example, I posted a video of this guy because I thought this was messed up. Oh no, actually, I commented under a video. I didn't even post this. But there was this woman, they could have been in New York. Who the heck knows where they were? I'm pretty sure they were in New York, which is in itself super expensive. And he proceeded to ask her. So this is a setup, first off, from my personal opinion. He proceeds to ask her, how much should a guy spend on a date? Tell me that's not a setup. Nobody ever questions the person who's questioning whether they're appropriate or just arrogant. Because if you think about it, why would any man ask a woman? So nobody ever questions the validity or the intention behind the person asking the question. Like, what kind of man asks a woman, sets her up in such a way, and the guys who are very immature about this don't see the setup against the woman. They think it's a justifiable question. But that in asking the question, it's antagonistic, is what I'm saying. So to ask a woman, how much do you think a man should spend on a date, is a setup to basically say, as if you're entitled to some sort of a number, but what people don't see she's being manipulated into is the part where, yeah, of course, it has nothing to do about the money. Let's just say that right up front. But the fact that a man would put a woman on the spot to come up with a number is a setup implying that she either, there's so many projections that this can have as far as stories around it, right? The idea that she's already got a preconceived idea about a money, which, first off, if you're asking that question, if you are actually having the audacity to ask that question of a woman, what kind of man are you that thinks it's appropriate that a woman should put a number value on a date? You see what I'm saying? Like, he's just trying to get it, he's poking the bear, poking her in such a way to give him what he thinks is like ammunition to basically degrade women further and make the woman sound like she's the asshole for coming up with a number, when in reality she may be making up a number on the spot because she doesn't know what to do. She's like, but why would I even pick a number? I don't know what the date should cost, but what's the effort that's behind it? But who asks that type of question between people you don't even know, and then everybody is basically sucked in psychologically to not see her as the good guy because she answered the question. So she gets vilified. He devalued her and also disrespectfully asked her a question that was totally inappropriate, and she never caught on to the fact that that's an inappropriate question for a man to ask. So what I'm trying to say is nobody actually looks at the person who asked the question and turns around and says, hey, there's no integrity in that question to begin with. So you lost your validity. And so, but see, this is where the emotional intelligence comes in. The average person isn't emotionally mature enough to recognize that they're being preyed upon with their emotions and their immaturity to side with somebody who's not healthy. Like whoever asks that type of question, they themselves doesn't have the respect for a woman. Doesn't matter what she said, but the fact that he even asked the question is disrespectful and has no validity. And so the fact that she answers the question, nobody questions the validity of the question, but makes her the bad guy, and he set her up to be the bad guy so that he could put her down and devalue her more. That's a pretty fucked up psychology, and that's the kind of shit I'm seeing. And I'm like, why doesn't anybody catch on to this stuff? She's young, so, whatever her answer is totally, it's nobody's business. So the fact that she even felt the need to answer is just showing that she's not, my personal response would be like, what kind of question is that? Why do you need to know? Because I would totally turn that around, like, what is your immaturity? What is your issue that you would even address something like that? As if women should not have any expectations, period. Because that's what he's trying to do. Say that we shouldn't have expectations, but yet the men have expectations, we don't have expectations. How fucked up is that shit? Nobody should have expectations, but they should at least be able to communicate effectively like adults. And the fact that they ask these types of questions shows, and it also pokes the bear in the sense that they see how quickly and how easily they can pit the men and women against one another. It's all part of the psychological manipulation, this whole mind control of get everybody fighting against one another. Because at the core root of that is the setup for humanity that men or boys can't be men because they're fighting over people who aren't coddling or doing whatever makes them feel in control, whatever the deal is, right? Everybody wants to be worshipped, right? But boy, I was like, wow. And some of the responses, because I was basically commenting in there about that, I said nobody ever nobody ever actually asked about the validity of the actual question and how he set her up. So she sounds like she's the jerk, or she's an asshole because she set a price. And it's like, and then she's feeling like she has to defend herself. That's the other thing in the video. She's feeling like she has to defend herself by saying, and he perceives, because he's provoking her. He's like, and what makes you think that? And she's like, and like having to be put on the spot to back up why you have to come up with, first off, you're being told come up with a number, and then you have to actually make an argument to support your case. Like, people don't see that you're not going to court here. You don't even have to answer half the fucking questions these jackasses ask to begin with. So she's like, well, I spend this much on my moisturizers and this, that, and the other. And it's like, that just shows she doesn't have a huge high self-worth in her youth. But it doesn't mean that she shouldn't expect a man to be able to pay for what she herself uses for herself. Because there's a feminine aspect to that, which most will not realize that could be naive for her, or it could actually be what she's accustomed to, is dating somebody who is able to provide for that. So we know that the immature guy is going to be like, well, I'm not paying for your moisturizers and stuff. Well, if you were a real man and you really wanted to be with that woman, that you wouldn't have that attitude. You certainly wouldn't. You would be man marriage material. But the fact that their intention is not to actually provide in itself shows they have no intention that is in her favor. And then to turn around, this is narcissism. This is teaching narcissism, right? And then to turn around and act like they're entitled to you and that you shouldn't expect anything from them. What? So you're going to bitch about providing for her in the first date. You're definitely not going to provide for her for the rest of her life. So really, they don't realize they're basically outing themselves, and they're rejecting before being rejected. Like, they're assuming they would reject her because of her expectations, but of course they don't know that. But if they have a chip on their shoulders and they're anticipating that, well, guess what? Whatever you think is probably going to be your truth, and I guarantee you'll manifest that shit in your favor to be right. Because the mind will say it has to be a certain way, and even in the negative direction, the opposite of what you would want, but you focus on? What? Yeah. There's so much hijacking, it's just insane. Whew. It makes me sad that people are so easily duped. That's my point. But at the same time, I will say I was duped too for a while. So it's not that I don't have faith in humanity. It's just a shitty waking up to when you realize, holy crap, I can't unsee this now. Like, the psychological games and manipulations for people in the world today they just keep getting next level. Like, are you kidding me? Now you got a marketing campaign so that men and women are putting each other down and rejecting each other, and they haven't even gone out on a date, but they're watching these TikTok and these short videos where they're being programmed to think that all women are like that. And so you're assuming what you don't want. So of course you're going to attract that, because that's how they program you. You don't realize it. You basically get preyed upon by your own prayers. That which you focus your attention on, you attract to yourself. That's a prayer. So this is where I say, like, you have to be careful what you pray for, because you could be praying and preyed upon by your own prayers. That's how that works. I think that's enough downloading for now. Signing off. Next time.